The topic is Brown versus the Board of Education and Historical Black Colleges, and we're talking to Dr. AAl-Hadid. Dr. AAl-Hadid, you talked about historical black colleges being primarily under the influence of the majority population, and in a real sense these institutions have moved away from their traditional purpose in terms of the education of African Americans in almost an exclusive kind of situation, even though these institutions were never separated or segregated themselves, that for the most part they are not able to perform the kind of work that they were able to perform prior to, let us say, 1954. What can you do, what can be done in order to bring these institutions to a mission of recognizing the importance of providing cultural information and similar kinds of information for their originally intended population?
Okay. Well, I think we have to start with the definition of the problem. The problem is that HBCUs, whether in the public sector or the private sector, are literally under siege. They're under siege either by state government, in terms of state government having the instrumentality to change them into predominantly white schools, or they're under siege by the private sector in terms of your private schools, because the corporation is saying, unless you generate the kind of people we want you to generate, and unless you allow us to control your schools, then we are not going to funnel money into those institutions. So they're basically under siege, whether they're in the private or the public sector. Now, how can we liberate ourselves from this form of academic and intellectual colonization? Well, what we have to realize is that when you look at an academic institution, especially a university, those universities transmit three commodities. First of all, they transmit culture. Secondly, they transmit knowledge. And third, they transmit skills. Now, historically, the HBCUs have done an excellent job in the transmittal of knowledge and skills, useful knowledge so you can get gainful employment. Where we have fallen short is that we have not canonized our own culture in the academic product that we are producing. So the first order of business is that we need to revisit the general education core curriculum and also the core curriculum within each department at the university, and make sure that we have built into the general education core curriculum knowledge about our own history and culture. In other words, the curriculum should be shaped in our image, not in the image of somebody we want to work for, but in our own image. Because the only weapon that we really have against academic colonization is culture. It was culture that allowed us to survive slavery. It was culture that allowed us to survive Reconstruction. It was culture that allowed us to survive segregation. And it's going to take culture that will allow us to survive an era of desegregation when we appear to be confused about who and what we are. And the historically black colleges have always provided us with some markers and a map by which we could navigate our way through America in terms of its contradictions of democracy and equality. So then I would say that we need to retrain and re-educate our administrators. Because one of the problems that we have is weak leadership. Many of our administrators feel that unless they submit to the white power structure, that they're going to lose their jobs. And therefore, in fear of losing their jobs, then they don't really give our young people the kind of knowledge that they need to survive in America.
You know, I heard you say one time, and let's have you to expand upon this, because I think this goes down the same line, that many of the young people who come to historically black institutions of higher education are what you call culturally illiterate.
That's true.
From a sociological point of view, what are you saying here?
Yeah, maybe that term, I remember using that on the previous program. But let me take the edge off of that. I simply mean that they do not have...
No, I'm not implying that it has an edge to it. I mean, I think it's, there's a point. Go on.
Yeah, the point is that they do not have a deep-rooted knowledge of their culture, their history, because they have been basically bussed out of their culture. So when they were sent from our neighborhoods to a hostile neighborhood in order to get an education in the K through 12 experience, they were alienated from the culture. So when they came back home, I mean, they did not really appreciate the value of the culture that they left going on the other side of town, you know, to get an education. So many of our students, in fact, I think most of them that are of African descent, select HBCUs because they come seeking the culture. And then when they come to these HBCUs, they experience cultural shock because the curriculum itself is Europe-centered. They're trying to educate these young people in terms of a black Anglo-Saxon education. So we really need to give them what they came for rather than doing a bait and switch. And then we attract them because they think it's a black school. And then the only thing that we give them is a step show, homecoming, and the drum line, you know, at halftime, you know, and that's not the culture.
What carries the culture.
That's an expression of the culture. That's a non-material expression of the culture. We need to give them the culture, which means that we need to spend a whole semester talking about different aspects of our economic system, different aspects of our political system, our social systems, our family system. We need to put a value on our culture. I think we have a culture and a history that is worthy of serious study, not just something we do during Black History Month or something that we do on Martin Luther King's birthday. They've been through that in high school. That civilization started with the Greeks.